Hey guys, welcome back. Today someone was asking me about the flank, and that got me thinking a bit. So, I don't play any flank roles. I mean, honestly, my understanding of TF2 basically centers around what you see and understand playing as demo, just because that's where all my experience is. So I kind of only loosely know about other classes and roles and such. But I did think I had a decent enough idea for a topic to talk about. So why not get into that? When it comes to when to play aggressively versus passively for a combo member, it is very straightforward. If you're trying to push, then you want to be getting aggressive. And when you're, playing off of some disadvantage and potentially trying to cede ground or cede an entire point, then you want to play more passively. Just very basic stuff, following kind of a flow chart about what the state of the game is looking like. For the flank, though, when to play aggressively versus when to play passively is not so simple. And that's what I wanted to talk about today and kind of give some ideas of what that might look like. So we got the random demo going. And yeah. So for starters, the flank is a kind of loose concept because on some maps there of course is a every map has a designated flank usually, but it changes depending on what's going on in the game. So for example, if here on Snakewater my team wants to push into second, most of the time the flank would be Saw and the combo would go lower. But if the combo wants to push Saw, then the flank becomes lower. And the flank players would then have to watch that. Just make sure no one gets behind. Spot that. Stuff like that. So what is the flank? What doors and areas of the map are the flank? Can change depending on what the combo's intentions are. But, yeah, no buts. Just, yeah. With that in mind, though, when it comes to aggression or passivity in the flank, first and foremost, the most important thing about the flank is that it's being watched. And a lot of the time, a flank player will play passively just to watch it. But both flank roles are kind of all about opportunism, because if an opportunity arises, then you absolutely can exploit a weakness on the flank. So if they're not spotting the flank, for instance, then a scout or a soldier can get behind. Now it's very important to communicate this to your team so they can actually play off of it, because a lot of the time when I see newer players play flank scout or something, and they get a free flank, which actually happens kind of often because at lower levels, people are less good about watching doors and the flank is open more often. But in those cases where that happens, it just kind of turns into a solo play where they instead just go try and kill the medic or something, or just start a back cap and the team's not ready for it. Having a guy behind is very valuable. It's more valuable if the other team doesn't know, because they should be able to get a free kill or something, or start a plan very unexpectedly. But even if they know, a lot of the time you can just be a massive pain behind and just pester the other team, where if they actually send a guy behind to go kill you, then you just keep going further behind, just string them along that wild goose chase, and it's a problem for the other team throughout. And that, if your team knows about that, suddenly like they might be able to push depending on how many players are back for you instead of on the front lines fighting. And yeah, it's just good stuff for your team. So when opportunities arise, you can usually get a lot of value. But not every game state is you should be looking to make plays. And in fact, in a lot of them, you don't really want to. Some such examples are like in a stalemate, if you're the defending team, as in the other team has control of mid, then you're not really looking to be aggressive on the flank. Because what you're expecting in that state of the game is for the other team to want to be sacking, right? And, as I've talked about before, with kind of intermediate spaces, your flank areas, such as your ITs or your saws or your valleys or your cafes, etc., usually the team with control of mid can take those pretty easily, and you're not going to be able to really sit there without getting shoved and dying. So you don't want to be aggressive in the flank during moments like that because of that risk. And especially like when things are settled down like that, it's so unlikely that the door is not being watched when, you know, all 6 players are alive. So you're not even going to get any value if you're able to get aggressive unpunished. That being said, though, yeah, you don't want to be particularly aggro in a moment like that because you don't want to get shoved and killed. And if you're the team that's trying to figure out how to sack, if their flank is really aggressive in, say, IT on process, by all means, just excuse me, just shove them with your combo, and or like your entire team basically, except your flank, and just try and get those kills, and play off those kills for the pressure, etc., etc. But yeah, so in a moment like a stalemate where you're expecting the other team to sack, as a flank member, you're really trying to just have a spot on the door. That's the most important thing. In many cases, actually, if you're a roamer, you might want to be kind of loosely spamming a door, but once they're sending their sack, you want to be focused on your counter sack, because for a lot of counter sacks, especially counter sacks out of blast, you have to be pretty quick on them to get much value. But anyway, and that's another case actually for willing to be kind of passive in a moment like that, is because you want to be kind of preserving your health for that counter sack, not doing anything like really risky unless it's, well, even if it's getting you a kill in some cases, they're just trying to sack that guy anyway. I don't know. So yeah, that's a good case for being passive. Another such case is actually something we're seeing here in reverse, where when you're on last, drink of water here. When you're on last with add, and you're playing to push out of your own last, in many cases, if everyone is alive on both teams, it's really hard to dry push out of your own last without using, so oftentimes you're going to have to just pop through and play a flip-flop. And in those cases, a big threat from the other team is them overwhelming the flank and backcapping. So, as you might expect, as a result, the flank is going to play very passively, because the number one thing is getting the spot, right? Because you want to know if you're getting backcapped. So a flank player will play in an area of the map where they may be able to see like multiple doors. But the number 2 thing, which is really important, is that you do not die. That's like really, really important. And this applies to like most of the flank information gathering and spotting like in the game. Is you want the info, but you don't want to be dying for it. Because if you die for it, then it's like the info is not really even worth that much anymore. Because if, for instance, your team is playing for a pop through out of process last, and you as a flank scout are watching the flank, so let's say you're watching 1 and 2, but you're holding so close to the door that 2 players just shove through it and then immediately kill you, then that info that they're behind isn't like that helpful anymore, because one of the players that was going to help with that, being you, is now dead, and it's like harder to even play off of having that info. Versus if you play much more passively, you get that info in live, suddenly like now you get to participate in that fight to stop the back cap while help is on the way. And it should hopefully be a hold, right? Just stuff like that. So knowing when the other team might want to be shoving your flank and playing passively as a result is an important skill in understanding how to play a flank class, basically. Yeah, and I guess that kind of is the summary, or just the kind of shorthand notes for it, is if you're expecting a flank shove, then you should be playing passively. Now, of course, there's a bunch of game states where, you know, flank shoves are very common and you should be expecting them, like I've talked about here. But just in general, if the other team is, you know, consistently trying to do a bunch of stuff on the flank and you're dying to it a lot, then you're going to need to make that adjustment of playing more passively. Yeah. Let's talk now about aggression, and some of this is going to be kind of a repeat, because it's just kind of on the flip side. But yeah, again, flank is about opportunity, and you can usually find a lot of opportunities in transitions. So when points or like large amounts of space are switching hands, then there's usually good opportunity on the flank to go behind. So really any transitions, most of the time when you're losing ground. And so in a lot of disad situations, it's important as a flank member to communicate with your other flank member whether you're planning to do a flank shove or not as the other team's pushing. Usually this is most successful if the other team is down a player, in which case you're expecting there to be a 2v1 on the flank. Because if they're down, let's say, a scout, it doesn't matter what scout they're down, the other scout is going to go play pocket scout and not be on the flank. If they're down a soldier, then they're most likely going to they're most likely going to have their soldier making space on pocket anyway and not watching the flank. If they're down a demo or a medic, I don't know why they're pushing, but most common ones down a soldier or a scout. Excuse me. In both of those cases, it's most likely that the flank is only one player, meaning your flank scout and roamer can potentially explode through the flank and take a 2v1 and go kill a guy really quickly. Or at the very least, if that guy lives because he's baiting properly, then oftentimes the combo is going to have to turn around and go deal with the problem in most cases. And what you're doing is you're slowing down their push. So if, for instance, the other team was down a soldier and trying to push with enough ad to push into second and then take an Uber into your last, a flank shove, even without killing the player on the flank, might waste enough time bringing their combo back that it actually evens out on last rather than it still being disad on last. So just the matter of buying time in that disad situation is really nice. Now keep in mind, if these flank members do die, then suddenly like you're down those guys, and then that is a big disadvantage to have. So you have to be careful with it, because I don't want to make it seem like the cure to playing Uber disad is just flank shove and then everything will be fine, because you're expecting a lot of the time that your flank will be dying. I mean, it's great if they can live, but that's not always going to be the case. So you have to be careful with it because you don't want to just bleed more players. But a lot of the time, if they are down that guy, is usually a good indicator for a flank shove. But any time that there's like something chaotic happening, players out of position, you might not expect there to be as much of a stranglehold on the flank. Yeah, I wish I had more specifics to offer on when flank shoves are good or bad, but it's just loosely from what I've been hearing my flank talk about, pretty much. But a flank shove on disad is a great opportunity to get aggressive. Another such case is when your team is trying to push off of picks or something. Your team's trying to push, but they don't... Your combo is having difficulty getting through, because whatever you're trying to push off of, so let's say you have 2 picks into a point that teams are not used to double sacking into, right? Let's say you have 2 picks, and the other team's holding very close. Just really trying to play that exchange. Your combo doesn't really want to just go headbutt the exchange and give them what they were looking for there, because a lot of the time they're kind of going to get stuffed in the doorway, and as a result, you know, the other team's going to get spawners in time, and then you just don't really have a push anymore. That advantage of having those 2 picks is kind of erased. But they're still down 2 players, meaning if they're playing very close and stuffing the door that your combo is trying to get through, that means the flank should have free reign to get through. And what you do after you get through is kind of up to you, whether you want to just turn that into a sack and get the force and then push afterwards, or, you know, take the fight and force them back and let your combo get through. What you do there is up to you. But if your combo is getting hard stuffed in a doorway and you have number advantage, so you're expecting, you know, doorways to be free, then that should give just the green light for your flank to run it through and get in, since your combo can't, just to alleviate that help. So yeah, that's another case of combo aggression being very good. There are others I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe something will come to me, but communication, of course, is really important, as it is with every facet of the game, because as a flank member, you're not gonna see what your combo sees. So you're really just gonna be playing off of what they say most of the time. So as far as timing for, let's say, just a dry push goes, like how do you know when to get in? Because you don't want to get in too early, otherwise you might just get focused down and killed, because you don't really have any support with heals or other players with you. If just a lone scout walks through a doorway first, like 3 seconds before the rest of his team, like there's no one else to shoot at, that guy might just go down to spam and focus fire. So you don't want to get in before your combo or too early, but you also don't want to get in too late and like bait the fight and potentially give one of their players a play onto your combo for force or something. So the timing of when you get in does matter, and that's 100% going to depend on comms. Some teams do specifically call their flank in specific moments, sometimes for last pushes, but most teams will be communicating more indirectly with their flank, and by that I mean communicating with their combo, and their flank picks up on the comms to know when to get in. So simple calls that happen pretty much every push. A lot of the time for dry pushes, I'll call if I'm ready, or just there's kind of like a combo consensus of when we're ready to go. My pocket soldier is through first, of course, and will be calling any relevant information, whether a team is passive or aggressive. If they're really aggressive, my pocket soldier might call for us to just take an Uber and try and catch them. And of course, if you're the flank and you hear that call, you know, okay, my team's taking an Uber right now. I might have to be a little concerned about getting shoved. if players are really, really caught to an Uber, a lot of the first reaction will be, well, I'm already so close to this door that leads behind, I may as well just shove behind rather than try and kite back to my side and just be surely caught to an Uber. So you can expect maybe some like serious aggression and shoving in the flank in a moment like that. Be ready for that. But if my pocket soldier calls their passive and my then that's already like a good indicator for where we are in the push. We know my soldier's gotten through. If my pocket scout calls there's no traps, which he should be checking and calling that, then suddenly, okay, now the flank should know that the scout is through and that the demo and medic are both about to walk through. And that's like, so you basically have a really good idea of where the stages of the push are at the present moment, just based off of comms alone. And those are comms that really should be made pretty much every time, right? Especially like no traps. As a demo, every single time I walk through a door in a dry push, I call that I'm through. And that's just information for everyone, really. That's information for my pocket scout that might be looking out for bombs and knows where to stand, right? But even though they might know where to stand, if anything weird were happening, or even just like giving the reassurance that like, yes, I am like just 2 steps behind you, you're fine, you can keep looking at where you're looking and not be paranoid about being out of position or anything. Or even if I'm like particularly slow for some reason, like maybe I have to reroute to grab ammo because I'm low, I'll call that so that my combo knows. And all of these comms are still useful for the flank to hear, to know when to pace what they're doing. So that's, yeah, that's important. So listening to comms, understanding the comms are important in a moment like that. As well as last pushes, they're very important. Hearing what side your team is ending on, and then knowing when to get in based on either the recommit cross, or you can even rotate over to the side your combo's in on and just get in immediately. Stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to talk about. As far as the flank pacing, flank aggression, flank passiveness goes. Again, I someday will be much more nuanced on the topic and understand a lot more. But I kind of just loosely understand how it relates to the combo and what I see and hear around me, because it's all about me when I play. I'm just kidding. So yeah, hopefully that was still kind of useful for people. I don't really see people talk much about, like, when people talk about the flank, they tend to talk about, you know, what the flank means, like what doors it entails, which is true and still important info. But one of the things that's weird to me about the flank is how being aggressive or passive is much harder to suss out than the combo member. Because for combo, it's like, I'm pushing, okay, I'm aggressive. I'm trying to leave, okay, I'm passive. And it kind of starts and ends there. But the flank, not so much. But yeah, just trying to make opportunities for your team, trying to just be a helpful asset to your team, and also trying to spot the doors, because, you know, you can get kind of lost in the sauce of just making plays constantly. Remember that your job is, you know, watching stuff and keeping an eye out for the enemy while still, you know, making whatever. I'm going on too long. Hopefully this was useful, and yeah, see you guys.